Hello and welcome to Thrive with Kirsty, the relatable women's coaching podcast that helps you thrive wherever you are in your life. I'm Kirsty from Kirsty Robson Coaching, and today we're talking about surviving versus thriving. Are you feeling a little bit burnt out right now? A little bit tired, a little bit exhausted, a little bit like you don't really know where the balance in your life has gone, but something feels a bit askew? Or do you feel like there's one area of your life that's completely dominating the others and you don't know what to do about it? Or are you just feeling like a little bit meh and you don't know what is going on? By the end of this podcast, you are going to have an understanding of where your energy is being drained right now, which parts of your life are dominating the others, and how to move from surviving to thriving. If you're in the UK right now, we have just had the most beautiful spell of sunny weather, and sunny and hot days always make me feel so full of energy. Well, if you are like me and you're wondering where to put that energy and what to divert it to, we're going to be talking about the ways that you can go from surviving to thriving and using that energy to build something really exciting in your life. So can we just talk about something I've been thinking a lot about recently, which is there is a massive difference between surviving and thriving, right? And I think most of us have just kind of spent way too long in this surviving mindset without even realizing it. Like surviving is just getting through the day, ticking boxes, collapsing on the sofa at 9 p.m., wondering where the day went. And actually, it's functioning, but barely. Thriving, that is waking up and actually wanting to get your day started. It's having energy left over at the end of the day and feeling like you are actually living and not just going through the motions. And what really gets me is that we've been sold this idea that surviving is just what being an adult looks like. The exhaustion is normal, that hustle culture is just how you succeed. That if you're not constantly knackered, then you're not probably working hard enough. But seriously, that is a lie, a big fat lie wrapped up in hustle culture and sold to us like that's something to be proud of. You're allowed to have a life that feels good. And you're allowed to have a life that you love, not just one that looks good on paper, not just one that ticks boxes. So I hit burnout last year and I hit it in a big way. I was in Italy and my friend had invited me over for the summer and I was going to be working remotely from her spare room. And look, I love Italy. Italy is one of my favorite places. I love the people. I love the culture. I love the weather, the countryside. Everything is it's just gorgeous. And you would have thought that being in Italy and having this beauty around me and enjoying everything that I could enjoy there, and really, honestly, the lifestyle is pretty incredible, is the antithesis of hustle culture, right? If you're still working at 5 p.m., people are like, what are you doing? Get out and have a life. It's just not the same mentality that we have in the UK. But I'm in this beautiful place surrounded by sunshine and with my friend, and I should be having the best time. And I could not get out of bed. And I hadn't been there for very long. I think I'd only been in Italy for about a week at this point. And it took me days to switch off from work and to feel like I could actually think about something other than work. And then I just crashed. I could not get out of bed. I remember looking at my laptop across the room from my bed and thinking, I cannot be bothered to turn you on. And I was like, okay, well, I haven't really had a day off. I mean, I've been on holiday, but I've been working every day and I haven't really had a day off. So I'll just take today off and it'll be fine. And then the next day I woke up and I felt exactly the same way. I thought, do you know, I'll take a week off. It's fine. I can work it around my existing responsibilities. I can take some time off. It's fine. I can like do the bare minimum. I say take time off. What I actually mean is like the bare minimum of what I could get away with. It wasn't completely time off. And then what started to happen was I started to resent the idea of working. And what I'd realized was I had spent so much time just working and not doing anything else that I was suddenly in this place where there was opportunities to enjoy myself. And I really didn't want to work. And not because I was being a spoiled brat about it, but because I had spent so much time working. I was working crazy hours and I was doing lots of things for other people and for the business, which don't get me wrong, I love building my business. I really do. But I was doing so much of all of the things I felt like I should be doing and not enough of the stuff I actually wanted to do. And in all honesty, I mean, I was also going through a breakup I cut all contact with the man I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, and that was really hard. There was a part of me that thought that we were going to end up together, and we finally decided to go for it, and it didn't work out. And I decided the best thing for me would to be cut all contact, but that hurt like hell. And putting that on top of the burnout, I mean, there were days when I didn't get out of my pajamas, and I cried constantly. And it was pretty hard. I wouldn't recommend heartbreak and I wouldn't recommend burnout. And I certainly wouldn't recommend both at the same time. But there it is. That's what happened. That's where I was. And it took me, I would say, 2 months before I went back to full-time work. I did the absolute bare minimum that I could get away with. So it really made me think hard about what the difference is between really feeling like you're thriving in your life and you're just getting by. And if I'm honest, I had been just getting by for a long time and doing all of the things I thought I was supposed to do and not really filling my cup. And there were parts of my life that were dominating others. And I really dived deep into what it means to have balance in your life, to feel like you're thriving versus just getting by and surviving. And actually, I created a framework for myself, which I still follow now. And we're going to go through today how to figure out what is happening in your life, whether you're in survival mode or thriving mode, or whether you're somewhere in between. And we're going to talk about the differences between surviving and thriving. Surviving is you reacting to your environment, and thriving is designing your life. If you are not sure where you're at in terms of whether you're in survival mode or thriving mode or somewhere in between, which is most likely where you will be, I have created a self-assessment, which is 7 questions. And all you have to do is rank them from 1 to 5 as to how closely you relate to them. So 5 being you relate to it the most and 1 being you don't relate to it at all. And it takes 2 minutes, probably not even that. And it gives you a really good understanding of where you are as a whole in your life, but also which areas of your life might need some more attention. And it looks at things like what we call energy leaks, which is blurred boundaries or toxic productivity. If you're not waking up rested or you can't say no without guilty, you're most likely in survival mode. So that tool I mentioned is a free download. I'm going to put the download link in the show notes. Head over to the show notes now and download your free copy of that. One of the things I want to talk about today is the concept of work-life balance. And I'm going to be completely honest right now and say that I think work-life balance is a flawed concept. I'm going to suggest that we look at our lives in a totally different way, which we're going to come into in a little bit. But the reason I think work-life balance is a flawed concept is because it suggests that you have 2 pillars of your life. One is work and the second is the rest of your life. So think about it for a second. Why is it that work is half of your life? If you are working a 40-hour week, which is pretty average working week, that's 24% of our time. So why are we considering something that is less than a quarter of our overall time as one of 2 pillars of the entirety of our lives? That feels skewed to me. I have a real sort of aversion to the idea that there is work and then there is everything else. And that's not to say that work isn't important. Of course it is, right? And a lot of us are building businesses or building careers or working in jobs that we hope will take us somewhere else. We're passionate about those things. We love those things that we do. We love how we make our living. And that's a great thing. But think of all the other areas of your life. Work being one pillar and everything else falls into that. That feels skewed. Instead of thinking of your life in a 50-50 balance, as in work-life balance, I'd like to invite you to think of it more as a symphony. So in a symphony, different sections in the orchestra play louder at different times. For example, there might be a section where the strings take the main focus of the symphony and they will play the melody and they will play loudest. And then it might go to woodwind and then it might be percussion and so on. When you use this analogy to think about your life, I think it gives us a really lovely perspective when we zoom out and look at our lives as a whole. It gives us that understanding that there may be times in our lives where work dominates and we feel like we are just all about work right now. And we are working super long hours and it feels like it's taking over everything. And if you work a really long day and work has completely dominated that day and you had no time for yourself, that then gives you a feeling of like, I'm missing out here, because if it's work-life balance and all I've done today is work, then where have I had time for myself? And that kind of thinking can actually be kind of difficult because it's just not realistic that we're going to have this perfect split of our time over the day, every single day. But if you zoom out and look at it as a symphony, it's very easy to reconcile the idea that right now, this section of my life, this section of the symphony is playing louder. For example, work is really dominating right now. Maybe that's your string section and strings are playing really loud. Work is dominating everything. And then in quieter periods of your work, you might have more time for your health or your relationships or your social life or volunteering or whatever it is that you're passionate about. And when you look at it over the whole, over a year, it doesn't feel like you get stuck in this feeling of work is dominating everything because that's all I'm in right now. It's really hard when you're in that moment to feel like you've got any kind of balance. But if you zoom out and look at it as a whole, you can recognize work is busy right now, and that's fine because I know when the summer hits, I'm going to have more time for myself and I can take one of my other sections of my life, and that section is going to be playing louder for me. Okay, now let's talk about the idea of how we spend our time. And I'd like to suggest that it's not about doing more, it's about the vital few versus the trivial many. So if you are feeling like you have so many different things that you have to split your time across and you don't have time to do the most important things, let's address that right now. The vital few is about making sure we prioritize the vital few important things in our life first and foremost before we give our energy to all of the trivial things on the outside. And yes, this might mean saying no to things that you're expected to say yes to, or that a people pleaser brain might want to say yes to. Or if you're feeling like, I don't like saying no to people, I don't want to let them down, this might feel challenging for you. But if you're really invested in protecting your energy, then you have to be focusing on what fills your cup, what gives you all of the things that you need, and then you can start to give to others. And of course, the vital few might also include those responsibilities that you absolutely cannot say no to. This also applies to who you spend your time with. You might find that having a big group of friends is fantastic because there's always somebody available if you want to do something social. But in my experience, it's not possible to have a huge group of friends and every single one of them fills your cup equally. I'd like to invite you to consider the possibility that sometimes there are a few vital people in your life that fill your cup and make you feel good and give you back the energy that you need more than having a huge community of people that you don't know very well. If that's you, there's nothing wrong with having a huge group of friends. In fact, it's fantastic in many ways. But in terms of how you spend quality time when you've got very little available to you, or how you spend your time if you're feeling really exhausted and you just want to fill your cup, consider your vital few over your trivial many. All right, so now we're going to be talking about the 4 pillars of thriving. Now, there's 4 main areas of your life that you can focus on if you really want to feel like you're thriving. The first and foremost is clarity, getting clarity on what is actually important to you and what isn't. This means cutting out things like comparison fatigue. I used to work with a client who had a really successful job as a lawyer. She earned a very good wage. And on paper, you would think she's a really successful woman. It turns out through the process of our conversations and coaching that she didn't want half of the things that she had. When we talked about her values and what's really important to her, it was things like freedom and travel and experiences, not things that she was accumulating. And it transpired the idea of success that she was living was not her idea of success, it was her parents' idea. Her parents always thought that to be successful, you needed to have a good job, earn lots of money, invest in property. And so that's what she did. That's what she thought she was supposed to do. But it transpires that actually what she wanted to do, what thriving looks like for her, is experiences over things. So she started spending time traveling and enjoying her life and spending more time away from the office because she worked really long hours, which was fine because she loved her job. But the job is supposed to buy you the life that you want. Your job is not supposed to be your entire life, at least not for most people anyway. Our second pillar of thriving is capacity. Now, this is how you spend your time as well as your energy. And this is such an important distinction to make because giving your time is super, super important. And I always say that time is the only resource you can never get back. Once it's gone, it's gone. And therefore, it is the most important resource that we have, in my view. But also, what are you giving your energy to? And those two things are very important and they coincide. I can give lots and lots of time to something that drains very little of my energy or gives me lots of energy. Or I could spend 5 minutes doing something that completely drains me and I feel exhausted and I need time to recover afterwards. think about the duality of those and what actually fills your cup, what drains your energy. We're talking about energy leaks. So this also could be having a 20-minute conversation with somebody who is so negative that they pull you down might feel more draining than spending an entire day at work. So think about time versus energy. Our third pillar of thriving is boundaries, and this is about protecting your mental and physical well-being. I am such a huge fan of boundaries, and setting boundaries literally changed my life. I mean, I have a workshop about this called The Art of Setting Healthy Boundaries, which I deliver to companies and co-working spaces and co-living spaces. And it always generates a lot of conversation because boundaries are such an important topic. And it's something I think a lot of us really struggle with. And being a coach and working on this stuff for as long as I have doesn't mean that I am perfect at this. I still struggle to set boundaries sometimes. I still find it challenging. But for the most part, I don't hesitate in setting boundaries now, and my life has improved so much. Boundaries are not just about the people in your life or the types of people in your life. It could be how much time you spend on your phone. Doom scrolling very rarely gives us energy. Doom scrolling is generally an energy leak. So think about how you're spending your time, your energy, what you're spending money on, who you're spending time with. All of these things are boundary related, and consider your boundaries because it is very hard to feel like you're thriving in your life when you have limited boundaries or boundaries aren't protecting what's really important to you. And then lastly, our fourth pillar of thriving is connection. And this is such an important topic, which I feel like the rise of social media should have brought us more connection, but actually in many respects, it's driven us further apart. I think especially right now, social media has a multitude of benefits and it really does help us in a lot of ways, but also it can drive disconnection. Social media is designed to be controversial, so it will promote opposing views to get the conversation started and get people warring with each other. It's designed to spark conversation. It's designed to make us kind of disagree. And it's been proven to be designed to be addictive, which means we spend so much time staring at our phones that we often feel like even when we're with people in the presence of our friends and our family and our loved ones, we actually can't disconnect from social media and we can't disconnect from our phones. Having connection with people, real life connections, being present with somebody when you're actually in front of somebody. Are you still thinking about work? Are you checking social media? Are you scrolling through reels? Are you messaging somebody back that, could wait a couple of hours until you're no longer with that person? I have a rule that when I'm with some of my friends, I don't look at my phone unless I really have to. My friend Sophia and I, when we meet up and we go for walks, we don't touch our phones unless we're taking a photo of something that we've seen on our walk. And the quality connection that we have during those walks is so important and I treasure it. I really do. When she's present with me, I really feel like she's present with me and hopefully vice versa. Now we've talked about the four pillars of thriving. One of the things I want to circle back to that we talked about was boundaries and specifically about how to say no to things that don't serve us. Saying no is a bit of a skill, if I'm honest, and it's not a skill that we're all very proficient in, and it's something we do sometimes need to work on. I really struggled to say no as a people pleaser. As I like to say, I'm a recovering people pleaser or an ex people pleaser. I really struggled to say no to things that didn't serve me. And the truth was, some of the things I was saying yes to, I hated. I really did not want to do, but I felt like I couldn't say no. And how draining was that? There was no way I felt like I was thriving if I couldn't say no to something. And I also didn't know how to actually say no without burning bridges or making it feeling awkward, and still acknowledging the importance of what somebody was asking me to do for them so they didn't feel like I was disregarding it. So I'm going to give you a little formula that you can use to help you to say no to things that don't serve you. The first thing you're going to do is to acknowledge the importance of the thing that the person is asking you to do. Second thing you're going to do is to protect what you want to protect. That could be your time, your energy, whatever it might be. And then deflect or defer to a later time. So again, the formula is to acknowledge, then to protect, and then to defer. I'm going to give you a real life example of how you can use this. So say, for example, you've been asked to take on an extra project at work and you don't have the capacity with your current workload, but you don't want to burn any bridges or to come across as being rude. So you're wondering how you can actually say no to this. So an example of this might be, I'd love to support this, but to ensure my current projects stay on track, I can't take this on right now. So what you've done there is acknowledge, I'd love to support this, protect, to ensure my current projects stay on track. I can't take this on right now, and that's your defer or your decline. It acknowledges the importance of what somebody's asking you to do while still maintaining a boundary about protecting your own time and energy. And I couldn't do a podcast about thriving versus surviving without talking about how we spend our time and this kind of always on culture that we have now. Look, I'm not the first person to talk about this, and this won't be revolutionary for you, but I think it's important to touch on. Since COVID, since the widespread use of things like Slack and Teams, people having work phones, working from home, meaning we are more accessible in our own spaces than we ever were before. Flexible working, meaning that, we might take a couple of hours out in the day to do something, but then we're working in the evening. All of these kind of blur our boundaries in terms of when we're working and when we're not, when it is work time and when it is personal time. This is a really common thing that I'm seeing with my friends, with my peers, with clients, that you are always available, and therefore, sometimes you might be getting calls at 8 o'clock in the evening from a boss who's still working, even though you finished at 5. Or there's an expectation that sometimes people work in the evenings because they're making up time, and it really makes it hard for us to protect our own time. And also, I think the danger of having laptops and work phones at home is that we might just think, oh, just go and check that email. And you get up and you check the email on your laptop, and then you respond to something else. And the next thing you know, it's 9 o'clock and you're still working. So I'm going to introduce a concept called the digital sunset. This is a non-negotiable hard stop to reclaim your evening and avoid that always on culture that I was talking about earlier. And the way we're going to tackle this is to introduce what I refer to as a digital sunset. This means that there is a non-negotiable time that you end your working day and you go into your own personal time. And that digital sunset can be any time that you choose, any time that works for you, but it means that you are off your work laptop and your work phone. You have disabled work notifications. You have disabled things like Slack notifications, Teams, anything that might distract you and pull your attention back to work. And you set a very hard stop for yourself. I'm not working anymore, and now I'm on my own time. And it can be helpful to have a kind of transition into this. So there could be a song that you play every time, or maybe you do 5 minutes of stretching at the end of your day, or you take a shower at that point, or you go for a walk. There's something that you do that marks the end of your working day. And it really helps actually your brain to switch from work mode to personal mode. Because if you're anything like me, when you decide to finish your working day, you still have these work thoughts going around in your brain and you find it hard to switch off. Having that sort of ritual or habit or transition, whatever you want to call it, that marks the end of your work time and the start of your personal time is actually really significant for your brain. Because when you do that consistently, your brain goes, oh, okay, I know what we're doing now. And it finds it easier to switch over into your personal time mode. Someone said to me in a workshop the other day, I just don't have time to do all of this stuff to thrive. I've got too much going on. And I get it. I really do. And here's what I want to gently push back on. Thriving isn't another thing to add to your to-do list. It's not something you schedule in between the school run and the work deadline. It's a shift in how you move throughout your whole life. It's choosing the 5-minute walk versus doom scrolling. It's asking for help before you feel like you're drowning. It's noticing when you're running on empty and actually doing something about it. It's building a full life outside of your job and having ambitions and hobbies that have nothing to do with your career. It's noticing what's dominating your life in your life symphony, what's playing loudest right now, and asking yourself if that's what you actually want. Thriving doesn't require more time, it requires intention. And honestly, it often means doing less, not more. So if I don't have the time, is the story you've been telling yourself, let this be your sign to stop using that as your excuse and start making small steps, actually building a life you love. Transformation doesn't require a life overhaul. It starts with one small, non-negotiable micro habit. If you are struggling with the idea of how to put into practice just small 1% changes. I have a 30-day Thrive calendar, which is a completely free download, but it's a 30-day calendar you can start on any day of the week, whenever you like. And it gives you a suggestion for one small action you can take every day to help you to build those micro habits that lead to thriving versus surviving. And it gets you out of some of those habits that keep us in that sort of surviving check boxes, ticking it off kind of mode. It's a completely free download. I'm going to put the link to that in the show notes. And what I really like about this is getting friends, family, and like colleagues involved. Because when you start it on the same day and you're doing the same habits on the same day together, it generates a lot of conversation, which I think is super helpful. Not only does it help you to reflect on how those habits are changing you, you also get that kind of community feeling of like, oh, my friends are feeling the same way, or so and so's finding that challenging as well. And it gives you that sense of support that you're doing it with other people. Not that these are big things that you have to change, but some of them are quite impactful. Even though they're small little shifts, they are quite impactful. And sharing that experience with someone else, getting your friends and your family involved, your colleagues involved, makes it a really fun thing that you get to do together. And you can reflect on it as a group, as a friend, as a work team, whatever it might be. So that wraps up the first episode of Thrive with Kirsty, Surviving versus Thriving. Today, we talked about the differences between surviving and thriving, what it means for your life. We talked about 50-50 work-life balance versus the life symphony. We talked about the elegant no and how to say no to things that don't serve you. We talked about the importance of boundaries, how you spend your time and your energy. And we've also talked about small micro changes that you can make in your life. Go download that 30-day Thrive calendar to start implementing those micro changes. Thank you so much for joining me. This first episode has been so fun to record, though I want to leave you with a question. If your life were a musical score, what section is playing so loud right now that you can't hear the rest of the symphony? Let me know in the comments, let me know on social media, and I will see you next week for a new episode of Thrive with Kirsty.